Welcome to Bonfire Conversations. I'm your host, Hamidreza, and today we have a very special guest, Winifred Phillips, a composer whose work has made a significant mark in the world of video game music. This year, she received a Grammy nomination for a score for Wizardry, Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord, adding another milestone to her impressive career. Winifred's credits include iconic titles like God of War, Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, The Homefront, The Revolution, and LittleBigPlanet 3. Her ability to adapt her style to different game worlds and storytelling needs has made her one of the industry's most versatile composers. She's also the author of A Composer's Guide to Game Music, a research that has been invaluable to many composers. In this conversation, we discuss her Grammy-nominated score, how the industry has evolved, and the challenges of composing for games. We also explore what the future of music and video game might sound like, from technological advances to creative trends. Before we begin, please make sure to subscribe to and like Bonfire Conversations if you're enjoying these conversations. Bonfire Conversations is available on YouTube and all the major podcast streaming services. This is my conversation with Winifred Phillips.
Congratulations on your Grammy nomination for Wizardry, Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord. So when you began this project, did you ever anticipate such significant recognition for the game and its music?
Oh gosh, yeah. No, I didn't have any idea what was about to happen. Of course, I knew the history of Wizardry, so I knew there was going to be interest in it. I mean, it has such a huge fan base. It was developed in 1981 originally, and and it was developed for the Apple II in Pascal. So it was one of the very first RPGs ever made. It was the first party-based RPG, and it influenced all sorts of franchises to follow, like Might and Magic and Final Fantasy. So it's very important to the history of game development, and it has a huge fan base. So I knew about that. So I kind of had the sense of the pressure of creating music for a game that originally hadn't any music, for a fan base that was so enthusiastic about it. But in terms of how it's been embraced now, no, I had no idea. I'm so glad. I'm so happy for the team at Digital Eclipse. Their game has really taken off. It's been embraced by the fans, and it's done really well. And that just it warms my heart because they're such a fantastic development team. They really believe in taking retro games and bringing them to modern audiences, but preserving what they originally were, the structure of the game, and making the experience reflect what people experienced when the game was originally released, while also making it beautiful and comparable to modern games in terms of that aesthetic, and also allowing for some of the quality of life improvements that modern gamers expect, which you can turn on and off if you want the really old school game experience. So I'm really happy for them that the game has done so well, and they were able to do something really awesome in developing a game that has both an Unreal Engine version running and also the original source code from the 1981 game running at the exact same time. Yeah.
Wow.
You can switch back and forth. You can pull up a display of the original game running right alongside the game that you're playing, so you can see how it originally looked. And I think that's really cool. They're known for their collections of games that sort of bring retro games to the public. They're considered the Criterion collection of game development because of their dedication to preserving the history and legacy of game development. So it was really very exciting to work with them on this project, and I'm quite thrilled that the music has been embraced the way it has been. It wasn't a part of the original game that released, which had no music in 1981, and so it was very exciting that the development community and the gamer community kind of wrapped their arms around this new music and embraced it and liked it, and so that means a lot to me. It really does. To be true to what the game originally was and the feel of it, while also doing something new. That was very exciting.
Yeah, this is the grandfather of CRPGs, and I wasn't born when this game came out, but I think one of the charm and beauty of the music for the game is that it's so similar to the music that we hear when we play Dungeons and Dragons with friends, or imagine going to a quest, or anything related to RPG games, um, and it's kind of like exactly taps into that emotion, and of course the childhood playing with friends, and also immersing into the us into the scene that we're at. So it's an amazing score, and I'm so glad that it's been recognized for a Grammy, and because these kind of games could go under radar, and some huge games come along and take the attention, but this one deservingly been nominated so far, and hopefully win. Yeah.
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much. And yes, it has been really exciting that this game kind of uh, appeared in this company. I'm very honored to be nominated alongside these really marvelous, high-profile games. And our game was an indie project, so having this game in with that company means a lot to us, and to me, just as a composer, to be able to create something that belongs in that company, that really is
Yeah.
exciting to me. Plus, yes, it really was exciting to create music for that traditional role-playing game experience. I mean, I was well aware that the game was developed by a couple of D&D fans at Cornell University who wanted to recreate that experience on a
Wow.
computer. And it really is immersed. It's steeped in the legacy of tabletop fantasy role playing. And that
Yeah.
is such an important part of the spirit of the game, of what makes it important. The game originally came with this paper manual, which games don't come with anymore, but at the time it did. And it had illustrations from an artist who regularly appeared in Dragon magazine. So,
Yeah.
so that reinforced the idea of that traditional tabletop role playing game aesthetic. And looking at that, it really reinforced to me the importance of creating a score that supported that world, and
Yeah.
that feeling of the feeling of the tavern and the training grounds and
Yeah.
the trading post and the dungeons and the combat sequences, the that whole gameplay cycle of tabletop role playing. It needed to really be reflected emotionally, and in terms of the energy and the kinetics, really needed to come through. And one of the things I love about the soundtrack release is that it's being used by role playing gamers on in tabletop sessions
Exactly.
too. Yeah, so I love that that it's sort of expanded into that world further, because that's really the world that gave birth to it and that it is saluting. So it's really nice that it has moved into the larger world of fantasy role playing in general. So that's really cool.
Yeah, there are playlists on Spotify and YouTube for D&D games, and they're like all over the place, from games, movies. Some of them are even made by fans and this is the perfect playlist if you want to play the game, or even sit down with your friends and play D&D. This is the perfect one.
Oh,
So
thanks.
how did this collaboration even began? How did they approach you for this music? Did they like heard your music on something that kind of like inspired them to like approach you to for this?
Well, actually, I'd worked with one of the producers at Digital Eclipse before on several projects at other companies. So we
Yeah.
were well familiar with each other. It was a collaboration that went a lot of years back, a lot of different games, and we sort of understood each other's creative process, which was really nice. So he contacted me and asked me if I was interested in composing the music for this game. And of course, I leapt at it because, I mean, Wizardry, that was just an amazing call to get. So I was very excited about doing it. And the team at Digital Eclipse was great to get to know and to collaborate with them because they had such like a an investment in the music and wanting it to serve the game really well and to immerse the players in the emotion of the experience they were having. So we had some great conversations about that, and we sort of explored different options. I mean, for a while we were thinking it's a really dark game. The there's permadeath in the game. Your characters can die at any time, and it's a really hard game. So you lose your characters, and one of the things that they tell you is don't get too attached because your party can die at any time.
Yeah.
And then you build new parties, and then you go to try to rescue the old ones, and it's a very interesting mechanic that way. But it's very dark. It's so we thought a lot about maybe the music should go super dark, and we thought about like a Nordic influence, like that righteous Viking, blood-soaked,
Yeah.
journey, that kind of feeling, and we sort of exploring musically how the dungeon would work with that kind of music in it, and but then looking at the kind of the underlying sense of humor that the original game had. There are a lot of in jokes, and of course, the manual is funny. It has a visually funny aesthetic to it, and just with tabletop role playing, there always seems to be a sense of comedy running through everything. You rarely run into an ultra serious. Tabletop session, and, unless you've got some really hardcore players, there does tend to be humor involved in that kind of gaming. So we after some conversations, we sort of pulled back from that, and that's when I started talking about a medieval and Renaissance approach,
Yeah.
which just seemed to fit the subject matter better, but staying as true as I could in the town music, the music for the overworld when you're not in the dungeon, staying very true to that approach, that the medieval harmonic structure and the Renaissance instrumentation, medieval instrumentation. I mean, we did salute some of the earlier conversations we had about Viking musical forms with the bowed lyres, which are very important in the score. There's a lot of that running through the music of Wizardry. And that has a very Viking aesthetic to it. It's very rough and ready, if that makes sense. It's got
Yeah.
a lot of character and texture to it, which makes it really interesting. But there's also quite a lot of the viola da gamba and the lyre and all of the dulcimers and zithers are very important in the score. There's the lutes are very important. There's just a lot of that kind of aesthetic to it. The recorder consort, things like that. It becomes a like an expression of an earlier time, and part of it is just trying to transport people back in time to sort of set the scene. And music can do a lot for world building. So that was really an interesting conversation to have, and it was very exciting to work on.
Yeah. So, when you were a kid, were you playing D&D sessions with your friends?
Yeah. When I was
Ah,
yeah, when I was quite young, I remember playing it with some friends, and we didn't really understand the rules that well. I mean, later on in life, I kind of understood better how it was supposed to work.
yeah.
At the time, we were just sort of winging it. But we were having a great time, and
Yeah.
then later on, when I became more of a fan of tabletop role playing and all of the ways in which you can experience it and appreciate it as a spectator, which I've really enjoyed nowadays. Now that I don't really have the time to devote to hobbies, to that
Yeah.
many hobbies. I mean, I play games because that's very important as a game composer. You've really got to play video games as much as you can. But just in terms of being able to branch out and do other things, I haven't had as much opportunity to do that. But I do listen to podcasts of tabletop role playing, which I love, and that which is great fun. And so I can appreciate the I don't know the the enthusiasm of the community. It's such a great creative community,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of what makes it so much fun because it involves your personal creativity in crafting the world you're exploring. So
Yeah.
that's really neat.
What's interesting is that the game came out, the original game came out like more than 30 years ago, and the music of it is established in 2024. So from
Yeah.
now on, if anyone want to make a sequel to this or a reimagination or a remake, they come back in 2024 to listen to its music. So
Well,
yeah,
I think Wizardry, kind of like Star Wars and other franchises, it's had a lot of iterations over the years.
yeah,
This first game, the remake that we made, was going right back to its original release in 1981. This game has had a few subsequent releases past the one that we were working on, and then of
yeah,
course, as a franchise, it's had a lot of sequels. And with the Wizardry franchise, it's just absolutely enormous in Japan.
wow,
It's got a huge life. It's one of the big franchises. When our version of Wizardry came out in Japan, it was sitting in the bestseller list. So
wow,
for video games, so it was like really exciting there because Wizardry is a phenomenon there, and there have been a lot of different Wizardry games. But in terms of what we were doing, we were remaking the first game in
yeah,
that started it all as
yeah,
it was originally made. So that one had no music, and so that had to be thought out
yeah.
from this first step from the beginning.
So Um, as one of the most experienced video game composers in the industry, how have you seen the industry evolve over the years? And how has this evolution influenced the role of music in games?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and there has been some evolution. I mean, watched dynamic music become more of a present phenomenon. It
Yeah.
was there. We had dynamic music elements even when I first started with the original God of War.
Yeah.
There certainly was that running through it, but the complexity of the structures, like the matrix of audio elements that go into a dynamic score, it's just sort of gradually ballooned outward and become more complicated and interesting and intricate to pull together. So that's been a learning experience. It's my composition process has evolved to accommodate that. So that's been interesting to grow as an artist, to be challenged by different demands that are placed on me, just uh, through the technical specifications of the music implementation. That has really pushed me in different directions I don't know I would have gone in if it hadn't been for that. And even apart from that, I think when you think about moving more into today, things like virtual reality have had an interesting influence on game audio as a whole,
Yeah.
with spatial positioning, which has been a very interesting concept to sort of wrap your brain around, both as a sound designer and as a game composer. Binaural and ambisonic sound has been explored much more thoroughly now than it had in the past, and that's exciting. The To have more liberty to make the sound more all encompassing, more immersive, because it the positioning is so enveloping. I think that's really cool. And just thinking about ways in which music can be implemented into a spatial environment is has been an interesting conversation to have. I don't really think that we've explored it anywhere near as thoroughly as it could
Yeah.
be. And I think that could be something that we do more of moving forward. I've even past VR, because spatial audio has been important in video game development. It was the ambisonic and binaural approach had been something that was being explored before surround sound kind of took over. And then everything was surround sound for such a long time that that these other spatial positioning approaches were just kind of set aside. But now they're coming back, and I think they could come into all kinds of game development. Just the binaural approach for wearing headphones really does make the sound leap out at you in ways that that surround sound just can't do. And it's just very exciting to see that kind of technology move us forward and make our conversations about what game audio can do more complex and interesting and fun.
Exactly, because for as we go forward, the ways that we play games are growing, and everything is becoming a platform to play games. I mean, you're at home playing a game, and the rest of it you're on the road and playing it, streaming it on your mobile device. So you can't just pick up the whole, like, imagine if you have a surround system and go on the road or everywhere that you go. So, and the experience should be equal anywhere you're playing, because otherwise there's going to be a compromise. And that's very important to look, because it's going to grow even more. Like, I mean, the future, without a doubt, like I think physical copy of games are gonna be gone, and even installing games are gonna be gone. So you just tapping, you're connecting to internet, voila, anything
And
is a platform.
and there it is, yeah. And the idea of having dedicated gaming spaces that are large enough and expansive enough to accommodate the kind of positional audio that you would
Yeah,
get it's like gatekeeping. It keeps a lot of people out of the experience. If you can bring it
yeah.
to the headphones environment, you're just opening the door to a lot of people to experience really impactful audio. So I think it's really cool that we're exploring it more.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were doing this interactive music for so long. I remember when I first, I'm a video composer now, but when I remember the early days that I started, your book came out, and I mean, I was aware of the interactive music, and I was trying to do my own thing, working on action games, for example. And I remember, in one part of your book, you were kind of explaining the process of making music for a racing game. And I remember, was like reading that. I was like, it's a racing game. How do you do that for a racing game? And there were so many ideas there. I mean, for example, as you are getting close to the last lap, to the finish line, the music is gonna have some layers added to it. I was like, this is so creative the way she's looking at it, and that opened up kind of like a new idea for me approaching games. Like, it's not has to be like just only like for action games. There's a music, and when the action comes, the percussions come in the
Yeah.
most cliche way. I mean, anything, any genre, any kind of game could use this technique, even if you're approaching it smart and with plan. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's so interesting the way interactive music can add a dimension to gameplay and
yeah,
also just inform players of how they're doing. Which is great. We're a part of the heads-up display essentially in gaming. We do deliver a lot of vital information to players. If the music is implemented in a creative way, we can be a part of that educational experience for players to inform them of what's happening and how they're doing, which I really like that when the music is doing that.
yeah.
And sometimes we're just commenting on the way players are doing, either in encouraging or discouraging ways, depending on how things are going. And that's also a really interesting way to add an emotional dynamic to the experience of playing a game, to have the music essentially be a companion and having a conversation with you about how you're doing.
Yeah. Speaking of your book, A Composer's Guide to Game Music. That's the book. If anyone's interested in video game music, it came out in 2013 or 14. Was it
14.
2013?
14.
14. Yeah, 14. Wow. Still, that's a great book. And do you have plans to write another book a sequel to that?
Well, who knows? I mean, I'm open to whatever might come in my future. I mean, right now my schedule is pretty tight
Yeah,
in terms
understand.
of the work on the next project that's coming up, and there's a game that's going to be releasing in December that I'm going to be supporting that
Yeah,
game, and then the Grammy. Nomination, so there are a lot of things that I have to do to kind of support the team and during this whole kind of journey for the
yeah,
music of Wizardry. And so that's been really an exciting thing. So just right in the short term, I don't see my schedule opening up to like turn towards that. But I would, it would be great to be able to sort of step back and have that like mental conversation about what's going on in music now and how I can add to what I shared then. I mean, I do have a monthly blog that I keep. In
yeah.
which I talk about new ideas that I've been sort of thinking about for game music, and I also share some of the content that I deliver during the Game Developers Conference every year, in which I do speeches about various projects I've done and what I've learned from each one of them. So that's kind of allowed me to continue to share new ideas and more of the things that I've learned since the book came out.
Yeah, you are so good at explaining ideas and especially your experience. I mean, even if it is a book, it's well written, and there are amazing conferences and talks at GDC, and I think all of interviews you had, and you always talk about your experience, which is a very a good example of how you teach, for example, video game music to someone else. I mean,
Mm.
there are other people that when they're explaining, like, okay, John Williams did this in Star Wars. I mean, we're talking about video games first, and secondly, I want you to tell me about your experience, about your difficulties, about your ideas approaching that character or that world. And you're always so good at it, and I always learn so much about
Mm.
game music when I listen to you. And I'm
Thank
curious
you.
about it that from your work on God of War in 2005, wow, to now, how do you feel you've grown as a composer? And are there like specific lessons or experiences that have been pivotal in shaping your journey?
Oh yeah, it's been a long process from God of War, the original one, to now, where by the way, I did contribute some music to God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. So that
Really?
was
Wow.
yeah, a little bit, but it was really neat to kind of revisit that and to be a part
Awesome.
of that again. So that was really nice. And but that process has, I think, a lot of the growth has been learning the tools and the technology
Yeah.
that's been, and I don't think there's any replacement for time and effort in learning those
Yeah.
lessons. I mean, all of us build up our own studio, and I kind of think each composer studio is kind of like their fingerprint. It reflects them personally. You make
Yeah.
choices about software and equipment based on what you love as a music maker. And so all of those bits and pieces of technology form your toolbox, and it's unique to you. So learning that and making and growing that expertise and mastering those tools, I think, is sort of a personal journey for each composer. Yeah, just the practice involved. It's kind of like being a musician and practicing your skills. This working in video game composition is very much a process of technological expression, and so learning your tools becomes an ongoing process of growth. So I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had moving through my career is just learning and growing my tools and learning different techniques to maximize their effectiveness and my effectiveness working with them. The different ways you can think about music when you know what's possible and when you expand your own possibilities with the tools you've got. So that's been very important. And apart from that, it's just the the opportunity to be involved in lots of different kinds of projects. Now, I know I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to bounce back and forth with a lot of different kinds of projects, from very mature, dark, rated M projects to rated E for everyone, kids games that are very whimsical and lighthearted. I mean, the LittleBigPlanet franchise has been wonderful to me, and I've loved composing for so many of those games. And on the other hand, the Assassin's Creed project was such an amazing experience to be able to compose music for that franchise and to move in that direction. And it was really very cool. But it allowed me to think about music in different ways and to expand my instrumental tool set, and to think about harmonies and melodies and the role of music in gameplay in a very different ways from project to project. So if you have the opportunity to jump around like that, absolutely take it. It's just fantastic. I personally think that it helps me to think outside the box now as a composer and to have different ideas about musical solutions to problems, because I've constantly tried different wacko things for different projects, and so I've had I have kind of an open-minded approach to what might work, since I've done a lot of different kinds of things. So I think that is another way to grow as an artist.
Yeah. Talking about technology, what do you think about AI, and does it affect you, or are you worried or happy about it? How do you see that?
Well, now I've heard a couple of viewpoints on it. There's the one that says that artificial intelligence may create tools for us as game composers that will be more intuitive to use and create more possibilities for our expression. And I'm all for that. I mean, if AI is going to afford me with a better creative toolbox, then I'm down for that, and I think that's great. But I don't think that we want the the distillation of creativity without the controlling viewpoint that I think is most important. I mean, there's a conversation that all creativity is essentially a synthesis of everything that you've experienced in your life. That you, from the day you're born, you're absorbing art and experience, and when you create, you're just essentially an amalgamation of all of those influences, and that's what your art is. But I wouldn't agree with that. I think there's a controlling perspective for each artist. There are choices you make depending on who you are as a person. It's not just a collection of everything you've seen and heard. It's also what you want to say. And so I think that is incredibly important. And I don't think that's something that we get from an artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
That they are an artificial intelligence is collecting everything it's seen and heard and then just synthesizing it into art depending upon a string of requests. But there's no controlling perspective there, unless you would consider the string of requests to be controlling. But it's not a direct, um, tangible control over the output of the art. And that would be the thing I'd be concerned about. I mean, without that controlling perspective, I don't think art can truly move us. And I honestly, I don't think that art created by artificial intelligence is really going to be something that is embraced that widely. Right now, there are so many issues with it in terms of the ownership of it, and the some of the legal issues moving forward, that it just might be a problem for companies to fold AI created art into their work. We're in a very uncertain period for that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Napster at the beginning of the MP3 revolution, when people were confused about what music ownership meant. And there had to be a whole process of legal cases that defined what music ownership is before MP3 as a format could really move forward.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're kind of in that period right now where there's confusion about what art ownership is, and where it's going to have to be sorted out before we can move forward with artificial intelligence as something that's useful to us and that we understand its place. So I think that would be where my thought process is about it right now.
Yeah. And personally, for me, when I look at it as a tool, it's so useful. I mean, I recently did a choir piece, and I sang for all the people, singers in the choir, and with the help of AI, I made it a legitimate choir, and it really helped me easily to see my vision. And I was talking to another composer about this, and he said, well, that's the threat here, that it's going to replace choir singers in the future. And I was like, we are at the moment using sample libraries, for example. If it was something that would have, it could have happened before. But when you look at it as a tool, because no way it's going to be close emotionally to the real deal for people singing that and putting emotion there.
Yeah.
And yeah, because again, when I was thinking about, I mean, like they're all like mixing tools now that AI is inside of them, and a sampler, for a granular sampler, is basically very small intelligent form in that sampler doing something for you. So yeah, when you look at it as a tool, it's very freeing, but no way that's or at least at the moment that's gonna be possible to create a kind of music you did, for example, and you draw a lot from your childhood, playing the D&D sessions and all that. So that's very important. Yeah. So let's talk about your favorite soundtrack. Your some of your favorite game soundtracks, aside from the ones you did. So,
oh gosh. The I listen to a lot of game soundtracks, and I enjoy pretty much a lot, just so many. I mean, there's so much great music being created. I don't really have a favorite in terms of something that that I would kind of lean towards. I mean, I know the ones that were influential to me as a kid, like the Final Fantasy
Yeah.
VII soundtrack, of course, was incredibly influential. The original Tomb Raider soundtrack was incredibly influential to me. And those kinds of things are really, they stick in my head because of that. But in terms of modern soundtracks, I mean, I enjoy so many of them, but I wouldn't point to anything and say that it's a favorite. My tastes change depending upon what projects I'm
Yeah.
working on. So yeah, I'm constantly changing my mind about what it is I like best.
Yeah. So, last question. If you could compose for any game or franchise, what would it be and why?
Oh, wow. Oh gosh. That's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I think part of it, I think, is because I've been always so surprised by what each of my projects have been. And I don't know if I could say there's a particular franchise that I would want to be composing for. I mean, I guess I could say that I would be excited to do any one of the tabletop role-playing game franchises. If in video game form, I would definitely be down with that and very excited about it. Yeah, I guess if any franchise was something that I would be interested in doing, I think it would probably be that. But I hate to sort of isolate it there, because a lot of the projects I've worked on have been surprises that I really loved doing. I mean,
Yeah.
for instance, the project that's coming out in December, a Flint Treasure of Oblivion, was a pirate game. And I hadn't had a chance to do that kind of stuff before then. So I got to really get down and dirty with this sort of pirate aesthetic and all these great pirate instruments, which were fun. And I wouldn't have predicted that was going to be the kind of experience it was for me. And it was, I wouldn't trade that. I mean, that was fantastic. So it's a fantastic sort of aggression that runs through that kind of music that I hadn't had a chance to really express before, and that was really cool. So I'm game for whatever comes next.
Awesome! Can't see more. Can't wait for more. So, all right, this is it. Thank you so much, Winifred. You're not only an incredible technical and soulful composer, but also such a lovely and kind person. And I think the first time I contacted you was over like 10 years ago. And ever since, every year, I've received a happy birthday wish from you. And in just few days, it'll be my birthday. And this interview feels like the best gift you could have given me. So thank you so much. And once again, congratulations on your well-deserved Grammy nomination.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. You're just delightful. I've really enjoyed this, and I'm honored to be a part of your Bonfire Conversations podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.